Welcome to True Real Studio, where we bring you some of the best stories from around the internet. If this is something you're interested in, please like, subscribe, and click the notifications so you don't miss a video. You can find all the original creators' links in the description. Our first story tonight takes us into the tragic world of Morgan McCaffrey. Shared by At Tie Knots, this chilling tale recounts the harrowing experience of an 18-year-old whose life tragically ended at the hands of her boyfriend, Gilbert Newton III. Morgan's attempt to escape their toxic relationship resulted in a horrifying escalation of violence, culminating in her untimely murder.
What happened to Morgan McCaffrey? When detectives showed up to the scene of the crime, they were met with an incredibly grim sight. Morgan had lost her life in an incredibly violent and tragic way, and it was clear that this was a crime of passion. Police concluded that Morgan lost her life at the hands of the person she trusted most. A person who her friends and mother had warned her about time and time again, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. Clues and evidence collected from the scene painted a clear picture of a disturbed individual who wanted nothing more than to hurt the person who hurt him. But what could Morgan have possibly done to deserve something like this? Morgan McCaffrey was just 18 years old when this crime unfolded. Prior to this, Morgan had lived a relatively normal life, growing up in the Philadelphia area alongside her mother. Unfortunately, I can't find a single mention of Morgan's father in any of the write-ups I found about her case, which has led me to believe that he most likely wasn't in the picture. Regardless, Morgan's mother had more than enough love to go around, and it doesn't seem like the absence of her father really affected her too much. Morgan always did well in school, had heaps of friends who supported her, and was all around doing great. She'd grown up on the 3500 block of Oakmont Street in Mayfair, Pennsylvania. Now, Mayfair isn't a town that's very well known, but it's located just about 10 miles away from Philadelphia, so you still have access to all the modern amenities that a big city has to offer. Overall, Mayfair looks like a wonderful town. There isn't much crime, and it's known for being a working-class town and an all-around great place to raise a family, and that's exactly what Mrs. McCaffrey did. The summer before the crime unfolded, Morgan and her mother decided to move away from Mayfair, and instead bought a home in Abington, a town that's still okay, but certainly not as clean-cut as Mayfair. Around this same time, Morgan had just graduated from Nazareth Academy High School. Nazareth Academy is known for being an all-girls school that's based very firmly in the Catholic faith. They bring in students from all over the state of Pennsylvania and even have a 100% college acceptance rate, and Morgan was one of those accepted students. After she graduated from Nazareth Academy, she began applying to colleges that offered dentistry programs, and she was quickly accepted into Manor College, which is located in Jenkintown, Pennsylvania, only about 7 minutes away from her new home in Abington. To say things were going well for Morgan, well, that doesn't even begin to describe it. Morgan was incredibly excited about her future. But more than anything, she was excited about sharing that future with her boyfriend, Gilbert Newton III. Now, we don't know when or how Morgan and Gilbert met, especially considering that Morgan had been in an all-girls school up until this point, but we know that the two had been dating for around a year when Morgan was finally accepted into college. But unfortunately, Morgan would never get the chance to share those college memories with Gilbert, because very soon, the unthinkable happened. By the time red flags started to fly, Morgan was blindly in love with her boyfriend, Gilbert. She'd wake up every day to good morning text messages, followed by compliments on her beauty, all the typical honeymoon phase stuff. When the two would hang out together, Gilbert always did his best to treat Morgan to the best meals he could afford, nights out that she'd remember for the rest of her life, all the things that most of us recall from our teenage years. Every time Gilbert performed in a sporting event, Morgan was in the front row cheering him on all the way. Morgan was fiercely dedicated to Gilbert, and she was willing to do whatever it took to make him happy. But unfortunately, the same can't be said for Gilbert. Now, we don't know much about Gilbert's background. We don't really know anything about him at all. Most of the media coverage on this case has been focused solely on Morgan, and Gilbert's story has kind of been left in the dark. All we know for sure is that Gilbert was battling some serious demons. After the first few months of dating, Gilbert's true colors began to show. What started off as the typical lovey-dovey, good morning beautiful type stuff quickly turned into something much darker. Now, Gilbert still pulled out all the stops when it came to treating Morgan to a great night out, but each of these compliments and grand gestures were now being supplemented with hateful remarks, mean comments, and even abuse. It all started off with Gilbert getting angry when Morgan wouldn't text him back right away. It was very clear that he was insecure, but about what? Well, no one knows. Morgan started telling herself that he was just going through some things, or maybe he was just having a bad day. But then the bullying escalated to name-calling. Still, Morgan convinced herself that Gilbert was just in a bad mood. We can all say things we don't necessarily mean when we're angry. But things only got worse from here, and eventually the red flags were too much to ignore. Morgan's family quickly began to notice that Gilbert showed no interest in them whatsoever. Whenever he would show up for a family dinner or just hang out at Morgan and her mother's home, he would clam up and just sit there on his phone, completely ignoring those around him. It was obvious he didn't want to be there, and he wanted everyone else to know it. The same thing was true when the two would hang out with friends. Gilbert did everything he could to show that he didn't want to play any role in Morgan's life. He purely wanted her to be a part of his. Morgan would repeatedly brush off this behavior, putting a positive spin on it, convincing herself that he just wanted more alone time with her. Every now and then she would bring this up to him, asking why he refused to show any interest in her friends or family, but Gilbert always found a way to spin things and put the blame back onto her, telling her that she was being too dramatic or that she needed to get over it and it was nothing. This erratic and abusive behavior went on for months, but then, well, things got worse. There was one particular argument that escalated so dramatically that Gilbert threatened to hit Morgan. Now, Morgan certainly didn't think he was serious. You never physically attack someone that you love, right? Well, wrong. So, I don't know if you agree, but for me, one of the most frustrating things that can happen is breaking your glasses, getting them scratched, or maybe even stolen. In fact, I've been through 4 pairs of glasses just in the last year because I always managed to scratch them right across the pupil area. This is why I've started using GlassesUSA.com, one of the largest glasses retailers in the United States. Glasses USA offers thousands of eyeglasses and sunglasses, such as Ray-Ban, Gucci, Oakley, and countless other brands. The best part is their frames start at just $39, which is up to 70% less than most other retailers. So the next time you're looking for new glasses because yours got damaged or lost, or you just need an update to your prescription, I highly recommend GlassesUSA.com. It's all online. You never have to talk with anyone, and you can get your glasses super fast, way faster than some of the competing companies. I recently picked up a few new pairs of glasses for them, which are the Ray-Ban Club Masters, which I'm wearing right now, as well as a pair of Revel Tune 2.0s and a pair of Revel Chicades, both of which I opted to get as prescription sunglasses. If you're having trouble picking your frames, you can actually take a quiz that takes less than a minute that'll help you narrow down the selection and make it way easier for you. They take things into account such as your face shape, anything you like or dislike. It just makes it super simple. They also offer some amazing tools to help you pick the perfect pair. And the most helpful of these tools for me personally was the AR Try-On. It basically scans your face and digitally places the glasses on your face so that you can clearly see what they'll look like without having to try them on in person. It's incredibly helpful. Now, the absolute best part of shopping with GlassesUSA.com is that it's a 100% risk-free experience. There's a 100% money-back guarantee so long as you contact them within 14 days. They offer free returns on nearly every order, and you can even get free shipping. If all this wasn't enough, GlassesUSA.com is offering exclusive discounts only available for 24 hours. Just click the links in the top of the description box to get all the details. Thanks to GlassesUSA.com for sponsoring today's video. There is a fine line between betrayal and your friends. Morgan learned this the hard way. Morgan was so deeply in love with Gilbert that she genuinely couldn't see straight. All of her friends rallied around her and tried their best to bring Gilbert's increasingly violent behavior to her attention, but she genuinely couldn't see it. She had no idea just how bad things had gotten. The problem was, Gilbert didn't act like this all the time. There were weeks, sometimes months, when things would be great. He'd be the perfect guy who said all the right things, made all the right moves, but then all of a sudden, these demons would emerge as if from nowhere. The two would be out laughing and having a wonderful time, then all of a sudden, something would make him angry, and the threats and hate would start flying as if the two were in some sort of war zone. These threats started out empty, but before long, Gilbert turned threats into promises. By the time Morgan realized just how bad things had gotten, she'd been shoved, punched, verbally abused in ways you can't even imagine, and she'd even been bitten. Morgan just couldn't understand how Gilbert was able to do this to someone he claimed to love, someone who did nothing but support him and help him in every way she could. The thing is, Morgan had been hurt badly in the past by a breakup, and she never saw it coming, and she didn't want to inflict that level of pain on someone else, even if they really deserved it. It just wasn't the type of person she was. But unfortunately, by this point, her hands were tied, and she had no choice but to end things with Gilbert. The problem was, after ending things, the threats, the abuse, the violence, it didn't stop. In fact, it got much, much worse. At one point, Gilbert sent a text to Morgan in which he claimed he was going to end her life and put her head on a swivel. Morgan was desperate to put an end to all of this. She tried her best to be civil and break things off peacefully, but Gilbert just wasn't going to have it. After several weeks went by, it was clear that Gilbert needed one thing: closure. He hadn't come to terms with the fact that the love of his life, well, was no longer the love of his life. He begged Morgan for something, anything, some level of closure so that the two could move on. He asked Morgan if she'd be willing to meet him in a public area where they could talk things over, smooth things out, and finally put this story to an end. Morgan hesitantly agreed, and the two decided to meet at a nearby train station to talk things over. But little did Morgan know, this talk would be her last. It was July 27th, 2020. Morgan and Gilbert had decided to meet up at the Meadowbrook train station to finally put things to rest. Now, this meetup took place roughly a month after Morgan had officially ended things with Gilbert. In fact, some sources suggest that it may have been more like 2 months after the two broke up. We really can't say for sure. But the two showed up at the train station at 7:30 a.m. But Gilbert had some interesting plans of trying to convince Morgan to take him back. Now, the events that unfolded at the train station have been hotly debated, and no one really knows exactly what took place there. Gilbert had proved himself to be unreliable in terms of his version of events, but according to his side of the story, before heading to the train station that day, he grabbed 2 kitchen knives from his mother's knife block, hid them away, and then made his way to the train station. Now, you might be thinking that this proves he had plans to harm Morgan, and that the whole thing was premeditated, but that's not at all what was about to happen here. According to Gilbert, he concocted a plan in which he would lure Morgan to the train station, then use the knives to threaten to take his own life. If Morgan tried to stop him, it proved she still cared about him. If she didn't, well, he had his answer. But this isn't at all what took place. According to investigators, the two had been speaking at the train station for around 45 minutes. The whole while, Morgan was looking for an opportunity to leave. This is proven by the fact that her car was left idling in the parking lot for the entire duration of their conversation. She likely thought it would be a quick 5 or 10 minute goodbye, then the two would go their separate ways. But Gilbert just wasn't letting up. Morgan never intended on hurting Gilbert, not emotionally or physically, but she eventually admitted she wasn't ever going to take him back because she'd already started seeing someone else. By this point, Gilbert was furious. He began calling Morgan names, but this time she'd had enough. She walked up to him and slapped him, then spit on him. And that's when the knives came out. But Gilbert didn't use them on himself. Instead, in a fit of rage, he turned them on Morgan. A passerby actually witnessed this attack unfold and immediately called the police, who arrived at 8:15 a.m. Unfortunately, by the time they got there was nothing they could do. Morgan had been jabbed at least 30 times and was left lying on the concrete next to her car, which was still running in hopes of a quick getaway. But Morgan would never leave the station that day. According to the eyewitness, immediately after Gilbert took Morgan's life, he jumped into his Jeep and fled the scene. Now, in most cases like this, it often takes police weeks or even months to get to the bottom of the crime. After all, the witness that day doesn't seem to have gotten a good look at Gilbert. He merely noticed the car speeding away from the lot. But less than 2 hours later, police would get the breakthrough they'd hoped for. And it came from one of the most unsuspecting of places, Gilbert's own mother. See, when Gilbert fled the scene that day, it seems like he had no plans of where he was going to go or what he was going to do. So he did the only thing he knew. He ran back home to his mother to ask for help. When he showed up at the home, his clothes were stained red from head to toe. Naturally, his mother was shocked. She didn't really know what to do either. The two chatted for a while and Gilbert opened up about what he had done, though he insisted that this was never his intention. He was just blinded by rage that he simply couldn't control. Gilbert and his mother spoke for a while, but his mother knew what had to be done. At around 10 a.m. that morning, she called the police and reported her son's crime. When officers showed up, they found Gilbert calmly sitting on the couch, waiting for them to arrive. When they questioned him about what had taken place that day, he confessed to everything. Now, at the trial, things just got downright stupid. Now, I try to refrain from saying things like this when it comes to cases of this nature, but I've got to be honest with you, both Gilbert and his lawyer, I don't know who they thought they were kidding. So what happened is that following Gilbert's confession, he was sent to trial to await sentencing. He never once claimed he didn't commit the crime. He only ever insisted that it wasn't premeditated. From the way I understand it, if the crime was not premeditated, he would only be sent to prison for a certain number of years. If the crime was premeditated, he'd likely be sent away for life. At trial, his lawyer did his best to convince the jury that this was merely a crime of passion, of anger, not one that had been carefully calculated over the course of the 2 months that Gilbert and Morgan had been broken up. His attorney spoke with the jury and openly admitted that Gilbert was, quote, an idiot, an immature kid, but not someone who would carefully plan out such a crime. He insisted to the jury Gilbert had lashed out in anger that day, and that the 2 knives were intended to be used on himself. But I don't buy this for 1 second. He asked the jury to consider the, quote, mental burden this defendant was operating under. But that's when the text messages were presented to the court. Now, you may remember a moment ago I mentioned a text that Gilbert sent, in which he told Morgan he wanted to display her head on a swivel. Well, this wasn't the only text he sent that sounded like this. In fact, he sent another text and specifically said, "I'm gonna stab you in the neck 57 times. When confronted about this, his lawyer simply said, "He's a kid. He says a lot of things." He followed this up by claiming Gilbert was a good kid with good character. Now, in cases like this, it's not uncommon for a jury to deliberate for hours upon hours, sometimes days. But in this case, the jury spoke for just 2 hours before reaching a verdict. Guilty in the first degree. Gilbert didn't look anyone in the eye when his sentence was read. He just stared at the floor in silence. He was going to be put away for the rest of his life, a mandatory sentence for first-degree offenses in Pennsylvania. Morgan's mother was then allowed to make a statement, which she addressed directly to Gilbert. She said, quote, "This isn't just a life sentence for you. This is a life sentence you imposed on all of us. I hate you. I will always hate you, and I will never speak your name again." And I, for one, certainly hope that she made good on this statement and never speaks of this monster again. Though, in the aftermath of this haunting tragedy, Morgan's mother, Kathleen, has done her best to use her daughter's memories in a positive way. Kathleen founded the Morgan's Light program, which she aims to bring awareness to toxic relationships and domestic violence. Kathleen travels all around the state, speaking to younger generations about the dangers of bad relationships and how quickly they can grow out of control. She shares Morgan's story, the impact that her loss had on her life, and how the situation could have been so easily avoided if Morgan would have had the knowledge and the tools to end the relationship long before she did. The thing is, Morgan's story may be over, but if you're a victim of a situation like this, your story doesn't have to be. Now, I'm not a believer in saying break up, move on, give up, and cut your losses. I believe everyone can change when given appropriate space and time, and maybe even an ultimatum. If someone wants to change, if they're willing to change, they will change. But don't let yourself end up in a situation like Morgan, where you continue to cling on to hope that things will get better when they so obviously won't. Get the help that you or your partner need before things derail. If you're a victim of domestic violence, there is help out there.
What a heartbreaking story to start with. Morgan's tale is a stark reminder of the dangers hidden in toxic relationships. Now, let's delve into the chilling account of Adlai Mestra, presented by @Explore with us. This story takes us through a series of bizarre and violent events that led to Adlai's arrest for the murder of his own family. This narrative offers a disturbing glimpse into mental health struggles intertwined with a tragic crime scene.
Adlai begins to grow more distressed.
Tell them to unlock the door. I can't. Risho, open the door, please. No, can you just let me out? Look, we got him. Bro, can you just let me out? Bro, y'all suck, man. Angel. Look, he has his own brain. That's what I'm saying. I'm commanding you. What is he doing? Angel, come on. Open the door. Who else is coming? Nobody? What? Why don't you just control him?
Adlai's conversation with himself is interrupted as the detective returns.
Are they coming? Or are they just... Do it. Alright.
It's Detective Carroll. Go ahead and sit down for me, okay?
Alright.
So, that's gross.
Sorry.
You should have told us, dude. We would have took you to the bathroom, bro.
Alright.
So, here, listen. What I need you to do, man, is just take a deep breath, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We got a lot to do, so just take a deep breath. Okay, you've been yelling a bunch. You doing okay?
May you please release me?
What's that?
May you please release me?
Release you where?
From this?
We can't, man. We can't. So, it's gonna be a little while. Just hang tight, okay? Please.
Are you gonna send more soldiers?
We have no soldiers here, man. We're all just cops.
Are you gonna send more soldiers?
He's not a soldier, he's a cop. He's a deputy.
Alright. Am I gonna spend the night?
You're gonna spend the night probably in jail.
Nice.
Okay? So we'll be back, but I just need you to simmer down a little bit, okay?
No, I have heard. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, it's a pretty rough day, man. You've had a rough day for sure.
Yeah.
So just take a deep breath for me, alright?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Despite the detective's request, Adlai would not be simmering down anytime soon. In fact, this is when things take a turn.
You wipe the camera?
Let's go. Hey, stop it!
As soon as Adlai escapes from the interrogation room, he heads for the elevators. Alerted by the sound of the wall breaking, it's only seconds before the deputies catch him.
Oh! No! Put your hands down. Turn around.
We gonna die by.
Turn around. Put your hand. Put your hands behind your back. Turn around. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. All right, you got him. That's good. I got him. He kicked a hole through the wall. Jesus Christ. Adlai, what are you doing, brother?
Y'all losing.
No, we don't lose.
I'm gonna have a bunch of energy lit on me.
Yeah.
Might become powerful.
Well, let's not be powerful now, okay? I just need you to relax.
Realizing that the walls in the sheriff's office are ill-equipped to hold Adlai, they decide to secure him in a police vehicle. After some cooling down time, Adlai is once again brought inside in order to be photographed, to give a buckle swab sample, and to have his clothing collected. He's then given a temporary suit to wear and is escorted to the vehicle again, and then to jail.
Alright, back in the car.
When they arrive, Adlai is led to a holding cell. Before his sister was left to grieve the loss of her family, Nancy Jr. offered some possible insight into what may have sparked this horrific event.
I guarantee you, they were getting on his ass. He already had some strife with my sister.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Over what?
Just because she's a teen.
Yeah.
She's a teen. She's a normal teenager. She has attitude. No, she doesn't. She didn't.
No,
But-
none of this was
But
supposed to
for
happen.
like someone who's schizophrenic and thinks that somebody's out to get him, and she's probably. That's why I asked if the door was broken in, because if she was the first one, I would not be surprised.
I've been a cop a long time, and I've been in homicide for a long time, and this one was definitely one I'll never forget. It was, it was insane.
Yeah.
When he was initially approached by deputies, Adlai had claimed that his family had rushed him, as was discussed by the deputies who first responded to the crime scene.
That was a dumb story. Oh, they all came at me. Killed them in all different places in the house.
Contrary to Adlai's claim, the evidence paints a haunting picture of his family's last moments. The autopsies revealed that David was shot in the arm, chest, and back of the head. Nancy was shot in the back and suffered blunt force trauma to her face as well as contusions over most of her body. 17-year-old Brayley had a gunshot wound to her eye and blunt force trauma to her hand and face. Adlai Mestre was arrested for 3 counts of murder in the first degree, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, extreme cruelty to animals, escape from custody of officers, and criminal damage to property. He has not been convicted or sentenced at the time of this video.
Adlai Mestre's story leaves us pondering the complexities of mental health and the devastation it can lead to. As we move forward, let's unravel the mystery of the Eastburn family, brought to us by @CriminalCoreYT. In 1985, this family was brutally murdered in their home, igniting a complex investigation that spanned over 2 decades and involved multiple trials. This case remains one of the most intricate in criminal history.
In 1985, a mother and 2 of her daughters were brutally slain in their home. It would take over 20 years and 3 trials before their perpetrator would be brought to justice. In the spring of 1985, Fayetteville, North Carolina, was a place where families left their doors unlocked, children played freely in front yards, and neighbors watched out for one another. It was also home to Captain Gary Eastburn, his wife Katie, and their 3 little girls, 5-year-old Kara, 3-year-old Aaron, and 22-month-old Jana. On May 7, 1985, Gary kissed his family goodbye and boarded a plane for England. He was heading overseas for a temporary training assignment with the Air Force, leaving Katie to care for the children. It was not unusual for him to be gone, but this time, fate had something unspeakable waiting. Since the Eastburn family was planning to relocate to England so that Gary could take up a liaison job with the Royal Air Force, Katie made arrangements to rehouse the family's dog, Dixie. She had placed an ad in the paper to find a new home for Dixie. Within days, a man named Timothy Hennis, a 27-year-old Army sergeant from nearby Fort Bragg, showed up at her door to take the dog. Their interaction was brief, ordinary, at least on the surface. Neither Katie nor her daughters could have known this was the beginning of their end. By May 10th, the newspapers began to pile up at the end of the Eastburn driveway. A neighbor, Catherine Strickland, began to feel a knot in her stomach. Something was wrong. The following day, on May 11th, silence filled the Eastburn home. No one had seen Katie, and the girls were not playing outside. The blinds were drawn. Katie also did not respond to her husband Gary's routine phone call. That next day, the neighbors could no longer ignore the signs. They called the police to request a welfare check. When the officers stepped into the Eastburn home, the stench was immediate. Upstairs, they found Katie in her bedroom, unclothed from the waist down, brutally, indecently assaulted and stabbed 15 times. Just down the hall, 5-year-old Kara was found stabbed repeatedly in the chest, and 3-year-old Aaron had been bludgeoned in the chest and back, each fatally stabbed repeatedly as they slept, and their throats slashed. Incredibly, 22-month-old Jana was still alive in her crib, weak but clinging to life after being left for days without food or water. She had survived what her mother and sisters could not. The sight shocked even hardened investigators. This was not just a slaying, it was a massacre. While combing the house, the investigators found fingerprints and hair. A luminol test of the walls and master bathroom indicated that somebody had tried unsuccessfully to clean up the crime scene. After returning to Fayetteville, Gary helped the detectives identify missing items, including an envelope of cash, Katie's ATM card, and a piece of paper containing her ATM password. The investigators believed that the crime happened between 8 p.m. on May 9th and 3 a.m. on May 10th. The detectives, desperate to find the perpetrator, even turned to baby Jana, the only survivor, to see if there were clues she could offer. They brought in child psychologist Helen Brantley to question Jana and show her pictures of her family and police photo lineups. According to her summary report, she was not certain that Jana had seen what happened that night, but had clearly heard things. Still, it was nothing that could conclusively help the investigation. Although baby Jana could not help, in the days after the crime, the police found someone who could. A young man came forward and said that he saw a white male leaving the East Burns home near Fort Bragg at 3:30 that morning. A tall white man dressed in jeans, a knit cap, and a black members-only jacket exiting the East Burns driveway, carrying a garbage bag in the early morning hours of May 10th. The man drove away in a white Chevrolet Chevette. The investigators also found a bloody sneaker print at the scene. The witness helped the police to create a composite sketch of the suspect. The detectives soon learned of the dog adoption and focused on Timothy Hennis. On May 15th, just 3 days after the bodies were discovered, Hennis was arrested and charged with indecent assault and 3 counts of slaying. In 1986, a jury convicted Hennis and he was sentenced to the end-of-life penalty. But the case would not end there. In 1988, the North Carolina Supreme Court overturned the conviction, ruling that the jury had been unfairly swayed by graphic crime scene photographs. At his second trial in 1989, Hennis was acquitted. He walked free, returned to the Army, and went on to serve honorably, even retiring as a Master Sergeant in 2004. For years, it seemed that the Eastburn case might never find justice. By the early 2000s, forensic science had advanced. In 2006, the investigators retested male DNA evidence preserved from the crime scene. The results were chilling. The DNA belonged to Timothy Hennis. Though the Fifth Amendment's double jeopardy clause prohibits retrials after acquittals, the United States Constitution's dual sovereignty doctrine allows a defendant tried and acquitted in a state court to be retried at a federal court. In addition, the Uniform Code of Military Justice permits military personnel tried in a civilian court to be court-martialed. At the request of the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant General John R. Vines, the commanding officer at Fort Bragg, agreed to recall the retired Hennis back into service as a pretext for charging him with the Eastburn case based on the new DNA evidence. On September 26, 2006, Hennis was recalled to military duty and returned to Fort Bragg the following month, quitting his job at the waste treatment plant in the process. In August 2007, the commander of the 18th Airborne Corps ordered that Hennis be court-martialed on 3 counts of premeditated slaying. In December, Hennis appealed this decision because the Army lacked jurisdiction, but this petition was denied in April 2008. In May, Hennis appealed against the court-martial decision at the United States Army Court of Criminal Appeals, but it was dismissed the following month. In September, Hennis appealed to the United States Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces, but this was dismissed. In December 2009, Hennis appealed against the court-martial at the United States District Court for the Eastern District of North Carolina, but this was also rejected in March 2010. Hennis's court-martial at Fort Bragg began on March 17, 2010, and lasted for 3 weeks. For the court-martial, Hennis enlisted the services of military lawyer Frank Spinner and 2 uniformed lawyers. The prosecution was represented by Army Captains Matt Scott and Nathan Huff. Colonel Patrick Parrish presided over the court-martial proceedings, while a jury panel of 14 military officers and non-commissioned personnel was convened. During the trial, the prosecution focused on the DNA evidence, with the prior eyewitness accounts as corroborating evidence. Spinner's defense team argued that the footprints, blood, and hair samples found at the crime scene did not match Hennis or the victims. In addition, they suggested that the crime scene evidence at the former Eastburn family home in Fayetteville had been contaminated. In response to the DNA evidence, Spinner suggested that Hennis had consensual intercourse with Katie before her end. Hennis himself denied having ever had intercourse with Katie, consensually or otherwise. Following 3 hours of deliberation, the jury unanimously found Hennis guilty on April 3rd, 2010. The jury convicted him once again, and on April 8, 2010, he was sentenced again to the end-of-life penalty. Hennis remains on the capital punishment row at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Baby Jana, the only survivor, grew up with the knowledge that she was spared while her mother and sisters were taken in the most brutal way imaginable.
The Eastburn case is a haunting reminder of the relentless pursuit of justice. Next, we dive into the tragic case of Lily James, shared by at Into the Deep Crime. Lily, a young teacher murdered within the walls of a prestigious school, unveils disturbing details about her relationship with Paul Tyson and the aftermath of her untimely death.
The first case we'll be looking at is the tragic case of Lily James.
Murder of Sydney water polo coach Lily James. The family of Lily James, the young teacher murdered
after a young woman was killed inside one of the city's most prestigious schools.
Australia was left in disbelief and sadness when the news hit about Lily James. The details were so heart-wrenching as she was found lifeless in the school bathroom with a severe head injury, so bad that the police mentioned she was almost unrecognizable.
Serious head injuries, and the actual scene itself was quite confronting for the...
Today, let's delve into the layers of this deeply saddening story, Lily James, her unfortunate passing, and the widespread sorrow that now covers not just her local community, but the entire nation. This leaves everyone grappling with more questions than answers. To begin with, Lily James came into the world in May 2002, born to Jamie and Peter James. Her family shared that she spent her youth growing up in Sanssouci, New South Wales. In 2020, she marked a milestone by graduating from Danebank in Hurstville. The following year, she took on sports business at the University of Technology, Sydney. Lily's mom used to share every moment of her life on social media. While juggling her studies, Lily was determined to make a mark as a part-time water polo coach at St. Andrew's Cathedral School. During this time, she crossed paths with Paul Tyson, a sports coach and former student at the same school. Their working relationship evolved into something more, and they began dating. On the other side, Paul Tyson is a 24-year-old sports coach at St. Andrew's Cathedral School in Sydney, Australia, and he was once a student there until 2017. Originally from the Netherlands, he came to Australia in 2015 to pursue a master's in teaching and fulfill his dream of becoming a PE teacher. He was also recognized as a hockey coach at St. Vincent's College in Potts Point. Now, the details about Lily and Paul's relationship are somewhat unclear, but a lot of students have stepped forward to provide some insights into Paul's behavior. Former students revealed to the Saturday Telegraph that the ex-sports assistant used to brag about his relationship with Miss James and engaged in behaviors that made them uneasy. In an exclusive interview with the paper, students labeled Tyson as a creep who flirted with girls at the school, describing him as having a roving eye and an unsettling, flirtatious personality. One student shared, "He made young girls in the sports team uncomfortable with his wandering eye and flirtatious nature. I'm shocked, but there's no denying he was a creep." Additionally, former peers from his school days labeled him arrogant, stating he was disliked by boys, but had popularity among girls. Now, on the evening of October 25, 2023, around 7 p.m., Lily was seen entering the school's gym bathroom, with Paul closely following, as caught on CCTV. Given their recent breakup, it's assumed that a heated argument unfolded in that very restroom. About an hour later, Tyson was spotted on his own, coming out of the bathroom. What makes this whole situation intriguing is that Paul sent a text to Lily's dad, using Lily's own phone, asking him to pick her up. But it was thought that Lily's dad ignored the message because she had her car at school, so he might have thought it was just a mistake. Afterward, Paul drove the borrowed white Lexus to Diamond Bay Reserve in Vaucluse, along Sydney's east coast. CCTV footage captured him disposing of a hammer in a bin, which was later confirmed to be the main weapon at the scene. Strangely, he didn't waste time reporting a lifeless body at St. Andrews to the police, but he did this 2 hours after leaving the scene. According to Dr. Watson Monroe, Paul spent several hours at that location, using the time to cause more trouble, thinking he still had control over the situation. Once he was done at the reserve, Paul pondered his future. considering the likely prison sentence for his terrible actions and his overall future in Australia. It's worth noting that he was not an Australian citizen. His third successive working holiday visa was about to expire. So it's likely that he was feeling scared at this moment, wondering what was going to happen to him. He contacted the police 4 hours after Miss James was killed in the gym bathroom, reaching out to them around midnight from Vaucluse Reserve. The operator relayed the information saying, "The informant says there's a body in a bathroom on the right-hand side in the reception area. Through reception and to the left. The informant mentions being there a couple of hours ago, a female body." The police didn't waste time finding Lily James, and it was confirmed that she was fatally beaten with a hammer. They said she had serious head injuries, and the surgeries she had were described as disturbing and shocking to see. Before the police could locate Paul, he fell from the cliffs above Diamond Bay to his death. The morning after Miss James's death became known, the New South Wales Police Air Wing searched the sea from above, while emergency services scoured the rocks below. Police towed away a white Lexus from the scene, stating that Paul Tyson was still wanted for questioning regarding Miss James's death. However, they didn't find Paul that day. On Friday, October 27th, a group of tradesmen working on the Diamond Bay walkway noticed a white object slumped across rocks below. For hours, police in a boat and on a jet ski worked to retrieve the swollen and battered body from the base of the cliffs before bringing it up to the road in the afternoon. It was confirmed that it was indeed Paul. In a peculiar twist, Paul seemed to manipulate the final stages of his sinister plan. He had called the police, possibly hoping Lily would be found sooner. Dr. Xanthi Mallet, a criminologist, suggested on Channel 7's Sunrise program that this manipulation was another attempt at control before Paul chose to end his own life.
The only reason I can really think of that he would have sent that message is to get the father to attend at that school. So in essence, either he hoped the father would find Lily or hoped that he would be there.
Dr. Mallet explained. He showed signs that he wanted Lily to be found. That may indicate he was hoping someone would find her and call an ambulance, for example. Alternatively, he may have been wanting to potentially change the time at which the police thought she had died by sending those proof-of-life messages to her father and then later calling the police. According to the police, the hammer purchased by Paul Tyson was not the one used to kill Miss James. Police believe Tyson had 2 hammers, with the second possibly originating from a school storeroom. Esther and Steph Thiessen, the parents of Paul Tyson, have decided not to bring his remains back to the Netherlands. Instead, they've chosen to have him cremated, and his ashes will be scattered in Australia. With Paul no longer alive, there are many unanswered questions about the reasons behind his actions and the dynamics of their relationship. However, one thing remains evident: Lily was cherished by the entire community. During the funeral, loved ones brought dozens of lilies to honor Lily, making the day all about her, as described by her father, Jamie James, in a brief statement. He spoke of Lily as an independent and vibrant young woman who lived each day to the fullest. Despite her busy schedule with work and studies, Lily found time to support her brother Max, her friends, and her family. Jamie expressed gratitude for the community's thoughts, prayers, generosity, and messages during this difficult time, thanking them for the many cherished memories shared with Lily. Friends, family, and students gathered for the service, wearing brightly colored outfits. Hugs and tears were exchanged as mourners entered the school. Dozens of school children in uniform, from all year groups at St. Andrew S., came by bus to pay their respects. Approximately 500 staff, students, and alumni attended the service, prompting the closure of the school for the day. The choice to hold the service at Danebank Anglican School for Girls was likely due to Lily's status as an alumna. The atmosphere got very quiet as they rolled Lily's casket out of the school gates. Lily's dad, Jamie, and her brother Max were right there, helping guide her to the waiting white hearse. You could see the sadness on their faces as they put Lily's coffin in the car. Tears were flowing, and folks around were saying kind words to comfort each other. Lily's coffin was decked out with lots of colorful flowers, like a nod to her lively self. The funeral crew took their time fixing up the wreaths that friends and family brought. Each bunch of flowers told a story, a memory of the love everyone felt for Lily. When the hearse finally drove off, folks stood there, saying their last goodbyes. There was a moment of quiet, and then everyone headed inside the school gates for the wake. Inside, stories about Lily were shared, and everyone took a minute to remember and celebrate the awesome life of Lily James. It was a mix of feeling sad, but also nostalgically remembering the good times she brought to everyone around her.
She was something special. Her kindness, her loyalty to people, just the gentlest person.
In conclusion, the manhunt for Lily's killer might close in its search, but for her family, the deep sadness in their hearts is something that won't ever fade away. The next case
Lily James's story is a chilling reflection of betrayal and heartbreak. Now, let's navigate through the tragic story of Rebecca Postal from At the Decoder Production. This narrative reveals a heartbreaking history of domestic abuse and the events leading to her murder by her ex-husband, Tim Bleefnick. It's a sobering look at the deadly consequences of unchecked violence.
If something ever happens to me, please make sure the number one person of interest is Tim, as that is who would do something to me.
The town of Quincy, Illinois, home to under 40,000 people, was widely regarded as a safe, pleasant place to raise a family. Nicknamed the state's Gem City, Quincy did not have many issues with violence or crime. But this all changed in the wee hours of February 23, 2023. Later that same day, 41-year-old mother of three, Rebecca Postal, would be found dead on her bathroom floor, lying in a pool of her own blood. And the killer would be closer than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of Becky Postal's tragic demise. Becky had married her ex-husband Tim Bleefnick in 2009. Together, they had 3 children and were described as a perfect family by those around them.
You know, when we knew Tim and Becky, that was when they had gotten engaged and were getting married, and it was a very happy time in their life.
Bleefnick was a valued member of the Quincy community. He was a Quincy University graduate where he had made a reputation for himself as an athlete. In 2019, he was inducted in the university's Football Hall of Fame. At the time of Becky's death, Bleefnick was working at Quincy Farm Products and Business Development. Becky herself was a career woman, having found her true calling in nursing. A compassionate and dedicated professional, Becky worked as a travel nurse during the COVID-19 pandemic, helping those fighting the illness in various hospitals throughout the United States. But what may have seemed like a perfect life on the outside did not hold up behind closed doors. In fact, behind Becky and Tim Bleefnick's wide grins and family photos were years of conflict, years which were slowly adding up. In 2020, Tim Bleefnick appeared on an episode of the popular game show Family Feud. During the show, contestants are asked questions, and the more popular the answer, the more points contestants are awarded.
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?
Honey, I love you, but said I do. Not my mistake. I love my wife. I'm going to get in trouble for that, aren't I?
Bleefnick was in fact speaking from the heart. His marriage, all jokes aside, was falling apart at the seams. On the 21st of January 2021, Tim Bleefnick filed for divorce. But to those close to him and Becky, the divorce did not come as a surprise. A fierce custody battle ensued, with both parents wanting to have more time with their children than the other. In May 2021, Becky even texted a longtime friend to confess, "I absolutely think he'll try to take the kids sometime." To those close to Becky, Bleefnick had been revealed as an abuser. Becky felt that she needed to somehow protect herself from Bleefnick and protect her children from being abducted. But in spite of revealing that she believed Bleefnick had true mental health problems, she was afraid of filing for an order of protection. The divorce would be a tough battle, and Becky had reasons to be scared. Bleefnick did not simply represent a hypothetical threat to her and her children. He was armed, and she knew it. Becky's initial divorce attorney disclosed in November 2021 that Bliefnick had still not returned a 9mm handgun belonging to Becky, one that she had asked to have back multiple times. In response to Becky's concerns, the court appointed a guardian ad litem to their case.
I serve as what's called a guardian ad litem. The role of a guardian ad litem is to represent the best interests of the children involved in the case, whether it be a divorce, a family, or other type of case.
After months of debate, Becky initially filed for an ordinance of protection against Bliefnick's father on December 16, 2021. Similar to Bliefnick's case, she feared for her children's safety around their grandfather. The mother of 3, it seemed, had started fearing for her life. In a text sent to a friend in 2021, she stated, "He has screamed in my face. He shoved me in front of the kids and has thrown things across the room where the kids and I were standing." Separately, in a text to her sister that same year, she said, "If something ever happens to me, make sure the number one person of interest is Tim. I'm putting this in writing that I'm fearful he will somehow harm me." But Becky's nightmare was far from over. Months later, as the divorce was still ongoing, Becky texted her close friend on the 14th of March 2022, saying that if Bliefnick doesn't get it his way, he may literally lose his mind. The text was in reference to the ongoing divorce and custody battle. In August 2022, a court order detailed how the children must be exchanged between Becky and Bliefnick. For reasons of safety, Bliefnick and Becky must stay within 3 feet of their cars when exchanging children. Yet, regardless of the safety procedures which were being put in place for Becky, tensions between the former lovers were rising and she knew it. In the meantime, Bliefnick started looking for a new bicycle. He created an anonymous Facebook account under the name John Smith and started inquiring on Facebook Marketplace. He asked about a blue 26-inch Schwinn mountain bike and a black mongoose bicycle, which he also purchased. On the 5th of January 2023, a friend of Becky's named Melissa Young recalled running into her at a local store.
She looked very mentally and emotionally exhausted, nothing like I used to see her. She was really in hopes to get the divorce over with and stuff.
Did Becky tell you that she felt as though Tim could snap at any moment?
Yes.
Did she also tell you that she had found out that Tim was hiding money?
Yes.
Did she also tell you that Tim had told her, "You'll be dead before you have any of my money"?
Yes.
Around this same time, Bliefnick was beginning to also act strangely, and people were beginning to notice. He asked his neighbor, Bradley Amon, whether he had any security cameras pointed toward his backyard. He didn't. On the 10th of February 2023, Bliefnick finally made an effort to return Becky's long-lost 9mm handgun. He called the Quincy Police Department and asked them whether they could return it for him since he did not want to do it directly. His request was denied. But perhaps they should have accepted Bliefnick's request. More people were starting to notice his threatening behavior and the toll it was taking on Becky. On the 13th of February 2023, Ted Johnson, Becky's significant other, decided to stay the night at the house.
I would park right here, this area.
Right there behind the house by the driveway.
Yes.
Between midnight and 1 a.m. that same night, video surveillance detected a cyclist riding past multiple residences in the area. Becky's next-door neighbor also received a notification from his surveillance system.
Did you get an alert on your phone that there was motion in your driveway?
Yes.
And did you view that video?
Yes.
When you viewed that video, did you see a person walking in your driveway?
Yes, I did.
Incidentally, both Bliefnick's phone and his Whoop armband designed to track his movement were turned off between midnight and 1 a.m. Between 1:10 a.m. and 1:30 a.m., Bliefnick's Google searches included license plate lookup, title registration lookup, VIN check lookup, vehicle records, and a search for Ted Johnson's exact VIN and license plate registration. At 1:32 a.m., a phone call was made to the Missouri Department of Revenue, the authority which handles vehicle registrations. As the coincidences between Bliefnick's late-night Google searches and the mysterious cyclist prowling around Becky's house started mounting up, it was becoming increasingly clear that the mother of three might indeed be in danger. Yet for the following week, between February 14th and 21st, the bike rider was no longer detected on any surveillance footage. On February 21st at 2:11 a.m., the same cyclist was once again picked up by cameras in the same area as before. On that same day, Rebecca messaged Bliefnick asking whether he could keep the children overnight for the next 2 days. She spent the evening with Ted Johnson. On the following day, February 22nd, the same cyclist was once again caught on camera performing a similar route as before. The same happened later during the night, with the bike rider being recorded at around 1 a.m. The cyclist stopped near Becky's house and forced his way in with a crowbar. At 1:11 a.m., Becky attempted to call 911. She failed. The home security system alerted Becky that the front door was open. At 1:16 a.m., the cyclist can be seen heading back the way he came on surveillance cameras. Incidentally, Bliefnick's phone and whoop armband were disconnected from 12:28 a.m. till 2:07 a.m. on that same night. At 6:45 a.m. on February 23rd, a nearby resident left for work, noticing that Becky's front door was open. At 11:51 a.m., Bliefnick called his children's school to ask them to not let his kids walk to their mother's home.
And he told me that he would be picking them up instead of having them walk home.
And approximately what time did he arrive at St. Peter's School on February 23rd, 2023?
1:50?
So about an hour before the dismissal even began.
Yes.
At 3 p.m., Bliefnick texted Rebecca's father. He asked if he could call her to find out when she'd be picking up the children, since the school had called to inform him that they had not yet been picked up. At 3:30 p.m., Bill Postal, Becky's father, would enter into his worst nightmare. He arrived at Becky's home to find the front door open, something which he immediately noticed as unusual. Becky did not answer his calls. In the bathroom, his daughter lay dead in a pool of her own blood.
Lex, I went to check to see if she had any heartbeat. I picked up her arm, but rigor mortis had already set in.
She had been shot 14 times. Bullet casings would later be found around and under her body, meaning that she had been shot whilst on the ground.
By the time I answered the door, I didn't see anybody, but then I saw a man walking away. He had a long coat, so I didn't recognize him, and I asked him if he wanted something, and he turned around, and it was Bill, Becky's father. He said, "I need to use your phone, call 911, Becky's dead."
At 4 p.m., Bliefnick was told of Becky's death. He replied with shock and was audibly upset. On the 27th of February, police found an abandoned blue Schwinn bike near the Quincy Public Schools bus barn. The surveillance footage cyclist had been filmed around that area multiple times. Police searched Bliefnick's home on the 1st of March, but the investigation into Becky's murder was far from over.
This is the third known location to be searched in this investigation. Of course, that includes Bliefnick's home in Quincy and, of course, the residence in the 2500 block of Kentucky Road where Rebecca Bliefnick was found dead.
In these type of cases, you want to get as much evidence as you can, and it continues all the way until the trial.
During the investigation, police found shell casings in Bliefnick's basement, which matched the ones found around Becky's body. Becky's DNA was also found inside a plastic bag found in Bliefnick's home. This discovery tied into evidence found at the crime scene.
Tell me what you saw.
Multiple pieces of what appeared to be plastic.
Reportedly, the shooter had used the bag as a homemade silencer for his weapon. Once again, Bliefnick's recent Google searches incriminated him. They included how to wash off gunpowder, average police response time, and how to open a door with a crowbar. On the 13th of March 2023, Tim Bleefnick was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty during his initial hearing and was denied bail. Throughout Bleefnick's 6-day murder trial, his attorney maintained that he was not guilty. Instead, they claimed a prowler, the same one who had been seen biking in the area of the murder, was at fault. During the trial, the jury heard of 3 simulations that law enforcement performed in order to retrace Bleefnick's steps leading up to the shooting. During the tests, it was discovered that the side of Becky's house was easily climbable, and it led to a window which had been pried open by the intruder. Bicycle rides were also timed according to the route taken by the security footage cyclist. Security cameras had captured the cyclist in the exact time frame Becky is believed to have been killed. Police also wrapped an identical plastic bag to the one the killer had used around a 9mm handgun and fired shots. The plastic shards created by the shots were similar in size and shape to the ones found around Becky's body. On the 4th day of Bleefnick's trial, even more Google searches were revealed.
Can you just wash off gunpowder residue?
Correct.
His phone was used to visit a website, DIY quickly, how to use a crowbar to open a door.
Yes.
By this point, the extent of Bleefnick's premeditation of the murder was becoming clear. The searches included, can you identify if a shotgun shell was shot out of a specific gun? How to open a window from outside? Can I force open my door with a crowbar if I lock myself out? And can gunshot residue be washed off? On the 31st of May 2023, Tim Bleefnick was found guilty on all charges.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Timothy Bleefnick, guilty of first-degree murder.
A sentencing hearing is scheduled for August 11, 2023. But Becky's tragic death is more than spousal murder. It is a story of long-term domestic abuse and how her cries for help were repeatedly ignored. A bereaved friend of Becky's wrote, "We've watched, waited, and prayed for justice. We have to listen to women when they fear for their or their children's safety. This could have been prevented. It breaks my heart to know that these boys will grow up without their mama. We have to do better." A GoFundMe has been created to help support Becky's children. So far, over $110,000 have been raised. The description reads, "Despite the circumstances of her death, she is remembered for the life she cherished, a life of compassion, generosity, faith, and fierce love for her family." What are you?
Rebecca Postal's tale is a poignant reminder of the severe impact of domestic abuse. Finally, we uncovered the tragic story of Jennifer Gladhill, presented by @UnrealTrueCrime. Jennifer's life took a sinister turn as she murdered her husband, Matthew Johnson, amidst a crumbling marriage and a hidden affair. This story reveals a web of deceit and a desperate attempt at a cover-up. Jennifer Gladhill's story closes our journey into the darkness of human nature. These tales of tragedy and horror remind us of the chilling realities that exist within our world. Thank you for watching True Real Studio. If you found these stories as haunting as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notifications so you won't miss our next video. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.